Okay, so all this stuff about fight, flight, freeze, feed, and fuck is part of the mind map. Okay, a basic 3-part model of the brain. Having a basic understanding of this and how it operates can help you understand like 90% of the human behavior that you need to understand, especially troubling human behavior. So let's start this mind map. We have, in the biggest, broadest sense. Okay, everybody will tell you that the human brain is the most complex object in the known universe. I've read that sentence or a sentence like in like a million of books about the brain. But let's just keep it nice and simple. This is a really helpful way to think about it. You've got this deep part of your brain. Some people call it primitive brain. I call it lizard brain. This part of your brain needs safety, okay? It's right there at the top of your spine, the base of your skull. Anything you can do that a lizard can also do is kind of controlled here. Blinking, shitting, all that kind of stuff. Your heart beating, breathing, a lot of these basic functions, including some of our basic fear responses and emotional responses in general. Okay, so this part of the brain needs safety. Okay, and then in the mid part of your brain, this mid part of your brain, it needs connection. It needs love. This is kind of the social and emotional part of the brain. I like to think of it as puppy brain, just because when you think of puppies, they're constantly like love me, pet me, pet me. They need a lot of love and attention, and that is kind of the central part of us that just wants to feel connected, close, bonded, that needs attachment. Okay, so the core need of all humans, the foundational need is safety. We're going to find that in a minute. The core need is connection, love, belonging, attachment, being a part of. And then ultimately we get up to this part of the brain right behind your forehead. This is what I call human brain. That's because most of the things that we do that are uniquely human or that are so highly developed in humans compared to all other species, they're kind of controlled up here. So we would think about things like having a time sense, right? Like lizards don't have watches. Or we could think of basic insight, like more sophisticated cause and effect, empathy, which we certainly see in other animals, but the kind of empathic understanding that humans are capable of is pretty magnificent. Values, right? Our complex values, those are all things that kind of live up here. Logic, reason, all right? Organization, planning, long-range planning, seeing into the future. That's part of our time sense, our sense of time. So those are the 3 basic parts of the brain: safety, connection, exploration. A safe and connected human wants to learn and grow. It is a fundamental need, right? I mean, honestly, kids will pursue knowledge. We don't have to stick them in schools necessarily. If they're safe and connected, they're going to go out and try to dig a hole to China. They're going to go out and, poke dead things with a stick to look at their feathers more closely. They're going to, there's probably a million things. They're going to start inventing games. They're going to want to explore the world. That's the normal state for a safe and connected human. If we are not wanting to go out and learn and grow, what we need to do is figure out how we are unsafe and disconnected. Now, here's the other issue, and I'm going to spend just a second on this. For every need, safety, connection, exploration, there's a primary threat that also drives us. So we have these needs, but the reason the needs exist is because these threats exist. That's death, disconnection, and chaos. Okay? Death is, death and all the varying shades of death, like aging, illness, and death. I just came up with a good acronym for that. AIDS. Anyway, aging, illness, death, suffering in general. AIDS, that's it. Aging, illness, death, suffering. Okay, all of those things are real primary threats to us, obviously. I mean, think about how we all reacted to COVID. And some people say we overreacted, some people say we underreacted. But the bottom line is that is a deep source of fear and terror, stress, and threat to us. Much more in our daily basis than many of us are consciously aware of. Disconnection is probably the core of it all, right? Connection is it's so literal. It means also connecting parts of our brain, connecting with each other, making connections between things in our environment, disconnecting from ourselves, disconnecting from our environment, disconnecting from each other, sends us into a deep survival state, right? It activates our lizard brain, and then we go into fight, flight, freeze, feed, and fuck. Dis is such an important prefix, okay? Dis is a prefix that means sever, okay? It means sever, it means negate, it means reverse. And as a human, if you're disrespected, right, that means respect for you is severed, negated, reversed. If you're dismissed, discounted, all of those things are extremely painful and send us deep into our lizard brain. Fight, flight, freeze, feed, and fuck. And then there's just basic chaos. That's a huge threat in human life. We just don't realize how many random, unpredictable things influence the course of our life. How much just sheer chance and luck seem to play a role in our outcomes. It's not that we have no control over the outcomes of our lives, but chaos is a very real thing. We just don't know when, a virus is going to come out of a laboratory in China, or some bats, in a cave, and shut down the global economy. We don't always know when these things are going to happen. We don't know if we're the ones who are going to have the best next big idea. We don't know if we're, we come out of the womb. I don't know. I'm just thinking suddenly of a really good example. Who's the guy who's the swimmer who won all those Olympic medals, right? He had a couple of genetic advantages. Like, he worked really hard. He was capable of working that hard. Many of us don't have that energy, but he had these really long arms and big hands and big feet, almost like flippers, So we just don't know what kind of random endowments we're going to be, blessed with. Sometimes those random endowments can really disadvantage us. And other times those random endowments can make us Olympic gold swimmers. We just never quite know, right? We don't know. We're born to a king or a pauper. There are a million ways that chaos really affects our life, not knowing when a hurricane is going to come. Actually, this house that I live in Ohio. 12 years ago, a hurricane came to Ohio and blew the roof off of this house. There's an example. You don't know when you're living in the Midwest and suddenly a hurricane gale winds are going to blow the roof off of shit. So that's what we mean by primary needs and primary threats. Primary needs: safety, connection, exploration. Primary threats: death, disconnection, and chaos. Okay, so let's take a moment to just soak that in. It's really important to understand this, because these are the things, right? Death, disconnection, and chaos send us down into our lizard brain, and our inner lizard, with all of its safety-seeking systems, sets off those safety-seeking alarm bells, and our whole safety-seeking system goes into high alert. It's important to know that, and important to know what the kind of antidote is. The most fundamental of all is to understand the definition of safety. You probably hear people, like in schools and stuff, a lot of preschools and elementary schools have safe spaces. Those things are actually great. Like, some people kind of are like dubious, like, oh, we're coddling our kids. But having spaces where people can self-soothe is really important to help de-escalate things, so people can regulate. But what does safety actually mean? We create the safe space, but we need to define safety. What is it to be safe? And there's 4 elements. I call it passing the safety test. PASS.